This week on The Other Side.
All of us get up here every day of Parliament and we talk about bills that we're very passionate about. We talk about bills that we have strong opinions on. But, Deputy Speaker, I say this quite sincerely. This is the most dangerous, scary bill that I personally have ever got up to speak about.
That was one of the greatest speeches we've ever seen in our Parliament, and we're going to show you a lot of it. The Misinformation and Disinformation Law rears its ugly head in our federal Parliament again this week for debate. Why any government, left or right, would want to destroy themselves trying to introduce such an immoral and dangerous load of rubbish is beyond me. We'll discuss this imminent and very serious threat to our freedom of speech in Australia. And I can't believe I'm actually reporting on something like this in my country. It is insane. America is on the road to restoration, with the left now out of power in the White House, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Donald Trump winning the popular vote for the presidency also by a margin of 5 million. The days of big government, elitist, centralised control are over for a while. We'll talk about the reaction sensibly in a moment. And Professor Gigi Foster joins me to discuss that awful COVID inquiry report and what we should really do next. This is The Other Side. G'day Brisbane, g'day Adelaide, g'day Australia, and welcome to episode 335 of The Other Side for the weekend commencing Friday, November 8, 2024. I'm Damian. The Other Side is your weekly analysis of the best news and commentary to get you smart for the weekend and week ahead without the woke. We have a new show dropping on YouTube every Friday night at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Our bias, we always declare it right up front. Our perspective on the news is centre right, what we would call good old-fashioned, everyday, common sense Aussie values. And most importantly, we pay our own way with your voluntary support. A very important thing to note about this show is there's absolutely no way that you could possibly agree with everything that I say or everything that our guests say, and that's totally okay. This show's about exploring different perspectives, hearing different points of view to what you might be getting from the left, to busting the total myth that all the deep-thinking people in Australia exist on the left of politics and in our universities, as the ABC seems to think. We know there are wise people all across this land. We bust the usual assumptions of modern Australia that tall poppies need to be cut down to size. No, they don't. They inspire the rest of us to aim higher. It's okay to mock and put down men, they say. No, it isn't. And that diversity is always good. When it means that you ditch your core values that bind us as a nation, it definitely isn't. This is The Other Side. Let's go. Well, here we are, post-US election 2024, and what a win. That wasn't just a win, folks. That was a complete sweep, almost an annihilation. The Republicans have taken control of the Senate back. They've increased their House of Representatives majority when they were expected to lose seats, most likely. They won the White House with at least 295 Electoral College votes and a whopping majority of 312 as the likely final outcome out of 538. 312. And Trump beat Harris by almost 5 million votes in the popular vote count. Trump has won all the major swing states, securing Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. And he's on track to win the embarrassingly slow vote counting states of Nebraska and Arizona. And the cherry on top is that Kamala's running mate, Tim Walz, couldn't even hold his own home county in Minnesota. Trump even won that. So make no mistake, this wasn't just an amazing win for Trump and a triumph for real democracy over the manipulations of the left. It was an absolute rejection and repudiation of the nonsense of left-wing ideology that the left have been trying to shove down all our throats since the Obama era. 16 years of radical far-left socialist social and economic policy and culture has been completely slapped down like the spoilt brat ideology it is. And boy, haven't we seen the spoilt brat tantrums in the past 24 hours to underscore just how infantile the left has become across the generations from the boomer hippies through to the Gen Z gender loonies. Tantrums of sheer ideological madness based on zero reality. Apparently, Trump won because racism and sexism and the patriarchy and blah, blah, blah. No, guys, you're taking the wrong lesson from this. The lesson is that all of those things are not the problem, okay? This poor woman couldn't even shave off her hair in protest properly.
Just woke up this morning feeling spicy. You guys feel spicy? Because I do. All right. I don't know how to use this thing. Maybe I gotta cut it. Here we go. Have I given up on America? Yes. Also given up on coloring this hair because, right? Fuck coloring my hair. Fuck having my hair be long and luxurious. Fuck all that shit. Fuck being skinny. Fuck being hot. Fuck being all the things that the patriarchy wants us to be. Because clearly, they don't give a shit about us. And I'm talking to you too. Those of you ladies who have the internalized misogyny required to do what you did. Minorities who are so scared of a woman in power that you'd rather cozy up to the white man just in case some crumbs fall off his plate. Let's just do some cutting. You know why? Because this is taking too long. Here we go. Short hair we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. We're cutting it off because fuck you. That's why. You think I'm crazy? Me too. I'm crazy.
Okay, we're going to stop it there because I actually think she may be truly unwell. But she does seem intelligent. Just a lot of stuff going on there that's connecting dots that shouldn't be connected, that's quite conspiratorial and odd. I mean, this is really quite a sick thing. So how did we get there? She was not the only one. I thought Libs of TikTok, that site, was going to explode yesterday. They put up all the crazy TikToks that people post from the liberal side. And I don't think we can ignore that rhetoric that she's talking about there, the patriarchy, it's all men, it's all the white man. It is typical of what a lot of young people who've been to university in the West in the past 15 years actually believe. They buy fully into that whole feminist patriarchy myth and the ideology of the white man controlling everything. This is extremely dangerous racist, sexist stuff. And we should never take lightly how cancerous this thinking is to our culture, to our society, and to our safety and security as a nation. This win by Trump may be America's last best chance and maybe the world's last best chance to correct this awful trend in the Western Anglosphere that we're seeing. But the work really now begins. It's not over. We're starting now. And it's going to meet huge and possibly violent resistance from the radical left because they're organized and they're violent and they're bonkers. Now, I really, really, really hope I'm wrong. But Trump will have to move on these institutions quickly and firmly, and the left will push back. This outright absolute win by Trump and the Republicans is very good for America and the world, because another close result, well, that would have been a recipe for disaster and dissent. Trump now has a clear mandate for the policies that he promised. He has the mandate for reform of a bloated, out of control, overly powerful bureaucracy that's drowning in debt and radical leftist ideology. Reform of a criminal justice system that's been abused for political lawfare. Reform of a business regulatory environment that is skewed to helping big corporations and financial institutions maintain their power and squash the entrepreneurial small and medium-sized business disruptors who could truly take America and the West forward from being able to compete. It's Wall Street working in lockstep with Washington, D.C. to dominate business, with the small competitors and the average worker being drowned in red and green tape and compliance BS and woke drivel. By some miracle, a rebel entrepreneur, an anti-establishment candidate, has beaten all the odds and all the attempts to take him down, from reputation attacks to political attacks to attacks on his business to a gross abuse of the legal system to waged lawfare attacks, and finally, even bullets themselves. Nothing could stop this guy. Why? Because he represents the people. And he stood by the people. And he just kept going. Because he spoke the truth about his desire to make his country great again. And he meant it. He was authentic. And it resonated. It resonated with a population sick and tired of the endless whining and negativity of the radical left and their sick, endless, victimhood-inducing ideology of Marxism 2.0. Their fake joy and niceness, covering up a very dark and dangerous political, social, and economic agenda. Yes, Trump won, but more importantly, the people won against a crooked system and a painfully entitled class of elites whose arrogance couldn't be more physically embodied in human form than by the man of hope who sadly turned out in the end to be an intolerant authoritarian narcissist, Barack Obama. A point underlined beautifully by the US Daily Wire's election night panel, including Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, and Andrew Klavan.
Barack Obama engineered every aspect of everything about all of this. And then he went out there and he tried in his own magical persona to yell at black men into voting for her, and they said no. And then he tried to take all of his magical popularity and transfer it to his terrible wife. She's not a good person, Michelle Obama. She's been portrayed as one, but she's not. And then she went out there and lectured them. He staffed up the entire Biden administration, and then he was purposely staffing up the Kamala administration. Right. And Barack Obama has been denied a fourth term. He has been denied and he deserves it so at the hands of Donald Trump yet again. The fact that Donald Trump has skunked Barack Obama twice.
Yes.
The fact that he skunked Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris. He is the destroyer.
But Ben,
he has become, some might say, Vishnu, destroyer of
I want to put a little cherry on top of your sundae. I want to take you back to a White House Correspondents Association.
Yes.
During the 2012 cycle, Trump had been flirting with running for president, and there's Obama. He gets up on stage on the podium, and he says, well, you know, Donald, there's one big difference, though, between me and you, is that, sir, you'll never be president. Ha ha, I actually got to be president. Ha ha. And you see Trump, and he just gives that little smirk, sitting there at the table. There it is. All these years later.
It's that photo. That's my favorite photo. It's so good. It's so good. And it's so wonderful. And now Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are going to have to hand the keys back to the man they declared a criminal Nazi who is going to destroy the country's democracy because the people elected him. It's so good. It's so good. Amazing season finale, God. Once again, 5 out of 5 stars. IMDb 10. Downloading. Will watch on plane again. Recommend it to all friends. Find me like things in the algorithm. All of these things.
I mean,
Yes.
you not only beat him twice, he came back from the dead and
Yes.
twice. You know, it's just a beautiful thing.
The thing is, though, that the media once again, just as they did in 2016, have had their butts kicked in terms of credibility. The people of America have said to ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN, we see through your bias and your lies. And that's really something, because the bias and lies were on overdrive yet again this third time round. The arrogant elites in the media condescended and patronized the American people, offering almost no neutrality or even-handedness in their attacks on Trump supporters. Imagine if just one late-night TV show actually dared to realize half their audience supported Trump and gave him a fair run. I should say one other than Gutfeld on Fox, which outrates all the late-night TV shows. Imagine how much more Trump might have won by if he had some mainstream media support. Of course, they'll now be reflecting on their misdeeds and reevaluating their bias and their contempt for half of the country. Just kidding, of course they won't be.
We're all going to have to wake up tomorrow morning and work like hell to move the world to the place that we prefer it to be.
No, John, more than half the country have just done that. They've just moved the world to the place they want it to be. So we're not all going to have to do anything, mate. Comedy Central's The Daily Show there. He came back out of retirement to do the show in the lead up to the election to try to help Kamala. Didn't really work out so well. But there he is, lecturing 45% of the country that thinks like he does, while totally ignoring the 55% who don't. It just fascinates me that there's never any reflection, never any self-doubt that they could possibly have it all wrong, that Kamala Harris and Barack Obama and the Bidens and the Clintons aren't the nice guys in the story after all, and that Trump isn't the villain after all. They can't even entertain the thought, not even for 1 second. Why is that? Well, I've got to tell you, I'm kind of tired of caring and trying to work it out. I've spent years honestly trying to understand the other side, to bridge the divide. But nowadays, I find myself less and less willing to even bother. I'm thinking the best way forward is actually just not to listen, but just to move forward carefully but confidently to building the world that we think is the right one, and not paying attention to them anymore. Not worrying about trying to convince them why we're right, just show them. The economic boom that America's going to experience in the next year or two is going to be quite something. Just the human spirit, just the positive energy, just the unleashing of that the rejection of left-wing economics and the depressing ideology that they have will bring. It's going to be such a relief and such an inspiration to so many people that it'll have an economic boom effect of its own. And we've got to start doing the same thing here in Australia. And the first thing we really have to stop doing is listening to our mainstream media. They have totally blown it for the millionth time. Just turn it off. A survey that came out just before the US election showed 3/4 of Australians wanted Trump to lose. Now, do you reckon if we're that off the mark, that we're actually getting the truth about this guy? Of course not. We're getting a rehash of what our media's woke affiliates in America are saying. 9 is affiliated with ABC America, 7 with NBC and the hideously far-left MSNBC. 10, Channel 10, is owned by Paramount, who owns CBS. So you're not getting a balanced perspective on Trump. You're getting a biased, one-sided narrative about the man, his policies, and his approach. So 3 in 4 Aussies think he's awful, and the other 1 in 4 is too afraid to say otherwise. He's not awful. He's a normal person with some big character flaws who's worked his butt off for his country, and he's going to have a crack at trying to save it from the left-wing madness that it's sunk into. If you've actually seen the change in California in the past 10 years, you'd know how very dangerous and tangible these radical left Democrat ideas are. If you think January 6th was actually an insurrection, you've actually been brainwashed into a blatant lie. It just repeated so often, it seems true. And if you think it was anywhere near as bad as the months of riots that went on all around the country that were caused by the violent radical left Antifa and the BLM movements, well then you've really sadly been affected by those lies. And it's not your fault. You're busy and you rely on the media and journalists to do their job. But they've been lying to you deliberately. Now this graphic I'm going to show you, it's a little fuzzy, but it's a meme that I think makes it plain as day, and it's very, very clever. On the left side, we've got the BLM riots, and on the right side, we've got the January 6th protest at the White House in 2021. This graphic compares the civil disobedience and the protests of the American left with the protests of the American right. There were more than 500 BLM riots across the country that lasted 7 months. There was one January 6th riot, and it lasted a couple of hours. There were more than 20 murders by participants of those BLM riots. There was 0 on January 6th. The only person shot and killed was a woman protester shot by a security officer. There were hundreds of small businesses destroyed and more than 150 federal buildings damaged, with a total damage bill of $1 to $2 billion from the BLM riots. There were no small businesses destroyed, only 1 building damaged, and a bill of only $1.5 million with the January 6th riot. More than 2,000 police officers were assaulted during the BLM riots, 140 on January 6. Most BLM protesters got let out on bail. The January 6 protesters were kept in solitary confinement. And it goes on. Another question we need to ask is, why were there 130 million votes cast in the 2016 election and 140 million votes cast in the 2024 election, but mysteriously 156 million cast in 2020, the biggest ever? That's a big difference. I'm not sure it can all be explained by more people turning out because they cared more in 2020 or because of COVID. Wouldn't have COVID have made people stay away from voting? I don't know, maybe as the mail-in. I don't know. You'd have to do an analysis on that. I'm not 100% sure, but somebody needs to look into that. That's kind of weird. Anyway, back to 2024. Donald Trump just won an election despite all that propaganda, all that lawfare and actual assassination attempts against him. After that, he still got 5 million more votes than his opponent. So are you getting a fair picture of this man, do you think? I don't think I'm going to fight our ABC all that much anymore. I'm just going to turn it off. I'm going to ignore them. And Peter Dutton should just announce that he will sell it off. Although nobody in their right mind, of course, would want to buy it. So maybe just give it to the staff. Make them run it and self-fund its ongoing operations. But yeah, give them a head start of a free bunch of networks. Who cares? Keep the property assets. Don't give them the property. Lease that back to them. But I'm not going to watch 7, 9 and 10 very much anymore either. I'll tune in for the first 5 minutes of the news to see if I've missed anything maybe, but that'll be it. Commercial talk radio, that doesn't even interest me anymore. It's too busy trying to be all things to all people to take an actual stand on anything. I'll read The Australian, I'll watch Sky, but apart from that, it's independent online media for me. So we have got to stop this disinformation and misinformation bill, because if it gets up, there's going to be no independent media. YouTube and all the platforms will just say, nah, too risky. No political news, no content on news or politics from Australia is allowed anymore, because we could get fined big time by their out-of-control authoritarian nanny-state government and their e-safety censorship police. As we saw with the voice vote, when the left lose, they blame the system, they blame the media. They hate the fact that you can get information from sources that they do not approve of. Here at the other side, we do not get more than $1 billion of taxpayer money like the ABC does to waste on fun stuff that we and our friends like while ignoring the public that we're supposed to serve. We have to rely on your support of this show. But I also hate asking for charity. So we've done a deal with what I think is the best VPN service in the world so that you can support this show and get excellent value for yourself in return. Private Internet Access VPN is a virtual private network. You download their app onto your phone, your TV, your computer, whatever you use, and it'll route all your data through a different server location so that you can't be tracked by the prying eyes of big government and big corporations. It keeps you and your family truly safe, and it will not massively slow down your internet speeds or make it harder to use your devices like some VPNs do. Private Internet Access, PIA VPN, is quick and easy to install, and once you've downloaded it, that's pretty much it. You can sign up using our special Other Side code for less than $3 a month. Unbelievable. That is a whopping 83% off the normal price, and you'll get the first 4 months free, and you will be helping our show a lot. So get onto it, piavpn.com/otherside to get the special deal. And get this, if you've got a Netflix account, by signing on through a server in another country to Netflix, like the US, for example, you'll get access to that country's library of Netflix shows on your account as if you were in that country, which is also great if you want Netflix in a different language or something. piavpn.com/otherside. Some very interesting footage emerged this week before the US election of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese speaking about President Trump during his first term as president. This was back when Albo was a frontbencher in Bill Shorten's Labor opposition. So he had a pretty senior political position even back then. He was speaking at a political forum during the Splendor in the Grass music festival. Have a listen to what he said.
Have an alliance with the US, we've got to deal with him, but that doesn't mean that you're uncritical about it. He scares out of me. And I think it's of some concern that the leader of the free world thinks that you can conduct politics through 140 characters on Twitter.
Wow. Very respectful commentary there from our now Prime Minister about the leader of our most important global ally. Albo will need to change his tune, although I reckon he won't be our Prime Minister much longer, so when Trump gets sworn in late January, there'll only be a few months of crossover, if that. But someone else who probably should be politely asked to step aside from his position is the Australian ambassador to the United States and former Labor Prime Minister Kevin Rudd. He's very happy to regularly express the dominant woke view on Trump in public to fit in with all the cool kids in Washington. Like, I get the feeling he probably never did fit in his school days. That's all well and good, Kevin, but now that President Trump is about to become the sitting president again, you might need to do the honourable thing and step aside, mate, in the interests of our nation. Here's how the ABC reported on some of the things that Mr. Rudd has said in the past.
Is the most destructive president in history and a traitor to the West. That's not all the former Prime Minister has had to say in the past.
Are Americans happy with Trump being in power?
Mr. Rudd's previously defended his criticisms, arguing they were made in his capacity as an independent think tanker.
I haven't done them as the Australian ambassador to the United States. And frankly, in this country as independent think tanker, people expect you to exercise a wide latitude of engagement in the public policy debate.
What? Just string a few important sounding words together and sound all officially, and you can just bluff your way through anything. Yes, people expect think tankers to exercise a wide latitude of engagement in the public policy debate. What the heck does that mean? I don't think Americans expect you to dump on their president that badly and that often in your role as a think tanker, mate, whatever that is. In any case, you may remember the interview that Trump did with Nigel Farage earlier this year in which he addressed Rudd's comments. I'm not sure he knew who Farage was talking about, frankly, but he addressed them anyway.
The AUKUS deal that's in place on nuclear submarines, America, the UK, Australia, very, very important deal. It's there to try and combat that huge growth, naval growth in China. But now, of course, things have changed in Australia. We've got a Labour government in Australia. The previous ambassador, Joe Hockey, I think was quite a good friend of yours. You got on pretty well with him. Now they've appointed Kevin Rudd, former Labour MP. I mean, he has said the most horrible things. You were a destructive president, a traitor to the West. And he's now Australia's ambassador in Washington.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Would you take a phone call from him?
He won't be there long if that's the case. I don't know much about him. I heard he was a little bit nasty. I hear he's not the brightest bulb, but I don't know much about him. But if he's at all hostile, he will not be there long.
Now, Kevin Rudd late this week decided to delete all of his old tweets about Donald Trump. He probably got some PR advice that if he was going to do that, then he should probably announce it and not hide it. So he made an announcement. But I can't get away from the feeling that I think he might just, like the attention. The only thing that really remains to be seen is what kind of character Kevin Rudd actually has and is. Is he the kind of person, is he the kind of man who will put country before personal ego and status? Will he step aside gracefully now that the American people have carefully voted resoundingly for Mr. Trump to be their leader yet again? I wonder. You're watching The Other Side, your weekly analysis of the best news and commentary without the woke. And as 2024 draws to a close, this is our fifth last show for the year, would you believe? We're planning for 2025 and we want to keep being able to do what we're doing and do more of it. And we really need your help. We rely on the voluntary support of our viewers. We get no government funding and advertisers are hard to come by on the non-woke side of media for some strange reason. There's plenty of opportunity here. So we need the support of you, our viewers. Despite having around 100,000 wonderful viewers every week, at the moment we have fewer than 100 regular donors. And I've got to be honest, that isn't enough by a long stretch to pay the bills. We've just launched our new website and a new way for you to support the show and help us keep doing what we're doing and maybe even do more of it in the future. And we only ask you to do so if you can afford it and you truly feel you're getting reciprocal value out of this show. But just go to theothersidetv.com.au, othersidetv.com.au, and sign up for the free or sign up for the exclusive side and support us for as little as $4.50 a month. That's less than the price of a magazine or even most newspapers. We really do need your support to keep us going and growing. That's othersidetv.com.au. And even if you can't afford to support us financially, please do sign up for free so we can still keep in touch if the misinformation and e-safety police come after us. Othersidetv.com.au, our new website. Check it out. Well, it's really great to see some members of the federal opposition coming out hard against the disgraceful and appalling misinformation and disinformation laws being proposed by Albo and Labor. Providing some real opposition. Thank you. These laws will give the government Orwellian-like powers to control what we can watch and hear on social media. And they'll mean the end of this show and many other shows like it. Forget this ban on under 16-year-olds from social media. That's a distraction from the main thing that's going on behind the scenes, which is this, the misinformation laws. Australians will only be able to get their news from government-approved media if these laws go through. The laws are a disgrace. There is no room for debating them or fixing them. This bill needs to be thrown out completely. It was shelved this time last year. God knows why they're trying to bring it back, because it's hugely unpopular. Actually, maybe we do know. For political manipulation ahead of the election due early next year. This is truly shameful stuff from Labor and the left, but typical of the modern, unaccountable left who think people are dumb, that you're not paying attention, and that they can get away with whatever they like. Let's hope and pray that they're wrong. Sadly, once again, it took the coalition a little while to get tough on this. Opposition communication spokesman David Coleman has been way too quiet, in my opinion, as has Peter Dutton, unfortunately. It's a potential huge vote winner if played right. But one MP who has been strong is the Nationals' Kevin Hogan. The bill was debated in Parliament late this week, which means they do want to try to get it through Parliament and into law before the election due next May. But Kevin Hogan, he stood up and he told it like it is.
All of us get up here every day of Parliament and we talk about bills that we're very passionate about. We talk about bills that we have strong opinions on. But, Deputy Speaker, I say this quite sincerely. This is the most dangerous, scary bill that I personally have ever got up to speak about. I am really, really scared and really... Oh, someone laughs. So, yeah, can't have a difference of opinion. No. That says it straight away, Deputy Speaker. Can't have a difference of opinion. I'm going to read out Voltaire. Voltaire, a French philosopher, Speaker. I disagree with everything you have said, but I will defend every day your right to say it. You might want to dwell on that over the other side there, or the members over the other side, Deputy Speaker, might want to dwell on that, because that's what this bill is undermining. I disagree with everything you say, but I will defend your right to say it. And what this Labor radical left-wing government is doing, Deputy Speaker, is abandoning that principle. Sure. They will now no longer, this government does not want to defend our right to say things that they disagree with. And that's what this is about, Deputy Speaker. So why would you want to do that? I'm surprised in Australia that we are debating this issue at this level. And you might want to say, well, what is the motivation? What is the motivation of a government to do this? And this radical left-wing government, Deputy Speaker, what their motivation is on this bill is control. Because when you want to stamp it or you want to clamp down on free speech in this country, you are about control. They do not want everyone necessarily to be able to say what that person believes is the truth. Because at the end of the day, Deputy Speaker, one person's misinformation is another person's opinion. And that is something that literally our diggers, we always have great ceremonial things about our diggers and our veterans, as we should, and is respected by both sides of this chamber. But our diggers fought for stuff like this. The basis of free speech in this country has always been something that's been respected. And again, Deputy Speaker, I can't believe we are debating this right in this chamber today.
That is the most powerful speech I've seen in federal parliament in years. And a big shout out and thanks to Max Freedom, the independent media channel from Perth that actually sent that to us and drew our attention to it. It's shameful that we are even debating a bill this disgusting in our country. It is shameful. If we lose the core freedom of speech, we've lost all freedom, because all other freedom flows from that one.
Now, the other side, they'll get up and say, oh, ACMA, it's independent, it's a government body, it's just looking for misinformation. Well, how are you going to define it? How is someone going to define what is misinformation? We've all read, I assume a lot of people have read 1984 by George Orwell, Deputy Speaker. This is all about the Ministry of Truth. Some anonymous person, if this bill goes through, is going to have the right to say and decide what is information for individuals to be able to say on platforms that they want to say it. And this is a slippery slope.
Yep, it is. That is the National Party MP Kevin Hogan, the member for the electorate of Page in New South Wales. Thank you, people of Page, for bringing us a politician with a brain and common sense. Mr. Kevin Hogan had a few ideas about why the government might be so keen to push this bill through at this particular time.
I think one of the reasons that this government's so motivated about this too at the moment is the voice referendum. The voice referendum, the government of the day, this government today, criticised people through the voice referendum that misinformation was being spread. Well, what was the misinformation that was being spread? Because what? People disagreed with them. Because people had legitimate concerns. Some people's opinion was that that was going to divide us by race. That was people's opinion. They say that's misinformation. Some people had huge constitutional questions about the voice referendum, that it was going to have huge constitutional ramifications. Now, are we now not allowed to say that? The government of the day, the Prime Minister of the day, has said, many members of that side have said, that their misinformation was spread about that. So is that what the person in ACMA is going to decide? That if you have a difference of opinion on things, you can't say that? So is the person in ACMA going to decide that if we'd had the voice referendum and they had these powers, that they would take down commentary on the voice referendum that said this is going to divide our country?
That's exactly what these laws are about. I think it might be time that Mr. Dutton gave careful consideration to putting someone with the energy and common sense of Mr. Kevin Hogan in his front bench as Communications Shadow Minister, because the guy we've got now remains a little too invisible. Last week I told you about what I think is one of the most appalling breaches of our civil liberties in terms of freedom of speech and freedom of expression by an Australian government in my living memory. A case in point as to why we can never let misinformation laws to go through, because government simply cannot be trusted to not use censorship for political purposes. Thousands of people from all across Australia had bought tickets to go see Candace Owens, the very popular conservative podcaster and commentator from the US. Candace's views are controversial and always have been. She says a lot of stuff I don't agree with, and lately she's been going down rabbit holes which are frankly a little too identity politics leaning for my liking, regarding her criticism of Jewish people in history as some sort of collective racial, ethnic or religious group that all think the same way. I couldn't disagree with her more on that. But she's not some dangerous Nazi or a terrorist or a violent criminal. And she defended herself pretty strongly when I put that to her. Regardless, Albo's Immigration Minister Tony Burke has decided to use special powers intended only for use in the most extreme cases to unilaterally deny her a visa to enter our country and tour here. Make no mistake, this is an abuse of power for political reasons. Candace is right-wing, the government is left-wing, and that is why they are banning her. It's disgusting. Actually, it's worse than disgusting. It's very, very dangerous, and it sets a very bad precedent. Here's a recap on a bit of my conversation with Candace in episode 326 of The Other Side. My concern is that we're becoming less and less and less tolerant of different voices in Australia. And this idea that we can just keep people out who say things that we disagree with, especially when they're non-violent, reasonable, sensible people, as you are, it does concern me. Why are you in trouble, Candace? What have you said?
I'm not entirely sure. I never really am. You know, these firestorms come every so often. Obviously, the first one was when I stood up to the George Floyd narrative, when the media was trying to turn him into Jesus Christ, and they lied about the facts surrounding the case. They only showed one video, and they conveniently forgot to mention that this guy was on drugs. And I did this video, and it got 100 million views, and I went through a severe firestorm. And I think part of that is because the media gets very angry when you disrupt their narrative. And you know, you can think that the media just became this way, like just became authoritarian, and that's not accurate. This is just the first time that we're starting to see it and recognize it. You know, it's been going on like this for a very long time, but now with podcasting and independent voices, you know, it's very frustrating for them that when they do these sorts of things and they issue these hit campaigns, that a person can survive, you know?
Yeah, they hate podcasts and independent shows like this one because they can't control us. They forget that freedom and diversity of opinion, the only diversity that really matters, is why Australia is a prosperous and great country. Labor and the Greens and the lefts and the unions, they're all one thing. And I include the left and the authoritarians and the Liberal Party in that group too. They would like us all to be under their total control. Hence the misinformation and disinformation laws that Albo wants to shove through Parliament.
I've critiqued, God forbid, you critique Bibi Netanyahu and his actions, you will just meet the full swing of the mainstream media. And I have stood up to these lobbying groups, and like you saw, the Zionist Federation of America, who are effectively just trying to bully people into their perspectives. And their perspective is that you can't critique anything Bibi does. And as a Christian, I am not comfortable with the amount of child death that is happening in Palestine right now. I'm not comfortable with the things that the politicians are saying. They have no desire or plan to stop. And I do not think it's acceptable to believe that you have a right to kill every single woman and child as a response.
Which is not what's happening, and which I strongly disagree with. But there has been a lot of healthy debate over whether Israel's response has been measured enough. I might think it has, but others might not. And I want to hear their views and make up my own mind. I want to get a full picture with all the information. So I don't agree with Candace, but we can disagree. We don't have to lock her out of the country. I still want to hear her. I also happen to disagree with 90% of the rest of what she said. I happen to agree, rather, with 90% of the rest of what she says. And I have a lot of respect for her on a lot of things. So I want to hear her. Which is why it doesn't matter what your politics are. If you're on the right or you're on the left or whatever, you need to be loudly opposing this ban. Because if we let this precedent be set, then it will one day be used against your side of politics. This is not Albanese and Labor versus Candace, folks. It's Albanese and Labor versus the people. You, us. Our right to see, hear and think and say what we want to. Albo and Burke's ban isn't on Candace, it's on us. It's Big Daddy government treating us like children that they rule over instead of adults that they actually exist to serve. Saying that we aren't allowed to go see her. We aren't allowed to make our own minds up. It's Big Brother stuff and it's not okay. We must have the right to make our own minds up about what's right and what's wrong. It's our most fundamental freedom. We lose this, we've got no other freedom. Candace is fighting this ban legally, which can't be cheap, but good on her for doing that for us. She announced this week that her legal team has filed a challenge arguing that Minister Tony Burke's decision was made with clear bias and improper motivations. According to Ms. Owen's legal representatives, Mr. Burke displayed prejudice against her case from the outset, making public remarks that cast doubt on his impartiality long before a decision was made. Mr. Burke also revealed private details of Ms. Owen's application to the media, further calling into question his neutrality, a spokesman for Ms. Owen's tour promoter said. This is about more than just Ms. Owens. It's about ensuring our government officials are held to the highest standards of fairness and transparency. From the start, Mr. Burke took a personal interest in this case, making disparaging public comments that suggest he was never prepared to give her application a fair and balanced assessment. The legal challenge contends that Burke's decision included numerous unsubstantiated allegations against Ms. Owens and relied on biased and irrational conclusions. The legal team argues that Ms. Owens meets Australia's character test. She does. And even if discretion were needed, these laws are not supposed to be used willy-nilly. They're really extreme laws that invest a lot of power in the immigration minister. These laws of discretion are only for extreme cases. It should never have been applied, according to the lawyers here, in her favour based on her exemplary record and as an international speaker who's consistently engaged with diverse audiences worldwide, and she's never incited any public discord. Now, you might have seen the Australian Zionist Federation was behind this ban. They wrote to Tony Burke, urging him not to allow Candace into the country. The group's leaders, Jeremy Liebler and Alon Kasuto, say they want the ban, but they don't represent the entire Jewish community in Australia. The Australian Jewish Association is more centre-right. It's the more centre-right Jewish organisation in Australia, and it's the fastest growing, I might point out. And they say, while of course they reject the comments made by Candace in the past, like I do, a ban in principle is anti-free speech and wrong, and it's against core Jewish values of human rights and civil liberties. So it would also be wise, I think, for the left-wing side of the Jewish community to realise that when you go around calling for bans of people who say bad things about you, you fuel the very conspiracy theories about inappropriate power and manipulation that you're trying to prevent. It's a very, very dumb strategy from the left, especially taking on someone as popular and mainstream conservative as Candace Owens. I mean, attack her bad ideas, fine. But calling her to be banned? What fool came up with that strategic plan in the Australian Zionist Federation? Most of the support for Israel and the Jewish community in Australia is coming from the conservative and centre-right side of politics. The Australian Zionist Federation would do well to remember that. And it's very hard to fight against vile slurs about the Jewish community being political manipulators working behind the scenes to control politics and wield excessive clout. Slurs which I believe are false, offensive and wrong, when the left-wing side of the Jewish community in Australia actually are being political manipulators working behind the scenes to control politics and wield excessive clout. Please stop it. If you have a Netflix or other streaming media account from a global company and you're on holidays and log in from another country, you may have noticed that shows that are available in those other countries are different. That's because different media companies have different deals with different streaming services in different countries. Imagine being able to log into Netflix, though, as if you were in America, or maybe a country that speaks a language other than English that you speak, to access more shows, but you can do it all without leaving your couch here in Australia. Well, there is a way. There is a way. Private Internet Access VPN is a virtual private network. You download their app onto your phone, your TV, your computer, whatever you use, and it'll route your data through a different server location. Not only can you access more content, but a VPN keeps you safe and secure and your family safe so that you can't be tracked by prying eyes of big government and big corporations. And it will not massively slow down your internet speeds or make it harder to use your devices like some other VPNs do. Private Internet Access, PIA VPN. It's quick and easy to install, and once you've downloaded it, that is pretty much it. And the great news is if you sign up for PIA VPN, you are also helping the other side heaps and getting great value for money as well. And you can sign up using our special Other Side code for less than $3 a month. That's a whopping 83% off the normal price, and you'll get the first 4 months free. Just go to piavpn.com/otherside right now to get our special deal. That's piavpn.com/otherside. And joining us now, she does every week on the other side, is Spectator Australia's Alexandra Marshall. Alexandra, welcome back to the show. Always good to have you.
Thank you so much, Damian. What a great week it is this week.
And you are in your Donald Trump red. Very happy, unlike a lot of my other female friends your age, not too happy. What is going on, Alexandra? Why are people taking this?
Damian, you have to represent. If you're going to do it, you've got to go for the full Trump red.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm wearing my maroon Queensland jacket today, so that's kind of as red as I'm prepared to go straight away from blue. Anyway, tell us a little bit about how you see it. I mean, the reaction, what's happening in the magazine this week, and you know, why are the left melting down? I mean, I knew they were going to melt down, but this has already been just astounding reaction.
Well, of course, naturally, the Spectator cover is Donald Trump, and our editor-in-chief, Rowan Dean, is one of the only people who's been saying Trump is going to win for years, even to the ridicule of his colleagues. But guess what? He was right. Trump is going to be back in the White House. And I think the left are mad because they tried absolutely everything. I mean, they tried to put him in jail. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to kill him. And yet still, here he is. The woke has lost, and conservatism and freedom and liberty is all going to be back in the White House.
Well, the rapist, racist, fascist moniker that they were trying to plant on him just didn't work. I mean, you know, he's never been convicted of rape. He had a finding against him in an assault charge. And that woman that brought that finding, as we've covered on this show, was, you know, clearly of a questionable intent, shall we say. The second thing about, you know, him being racist is just completely false and unprovable, just because he doesn't want illegal immigrants to stay in his country because he's worried about the implications of that. And the idea that he's a fascist. I mean, the left are just stuck on this fascist thing. It's like, there is no proof that this man is not. He's been the president before, guys, for 4 years, you know. He didn't actually behave like a fascist then. He's just learned a few lessons, and he will be tougher this time. He will be more careful in the people that he hires, no doubt. But he's got every right to be. And he needs to clean up the criminal justice system to stop all this lawfare.
I mean, well, speaking of fascism, we had about 5 minutes of a Trump free speech victory with Elon Musk, the head of one of the largest social media platforms, standing there on stage, and then suddenly Australia thought, you know what? We've seen American freedom, and we're just going to throw that in the shredder this week.
Yeah, it's insane. Coming to this question of censorship too, I'm a little bit concerned about the idea that Anthony Albanese thinks he can ban television. I mean, essentially trying to put a ban on YouTube for kids under 16 in 2024, it would be the equivalent of trying to put a ban on television in 1964. I mean, it's insane. And I mean, let's be realistic, right? This has got to be a political stunt, because there's no way they are actually going to be able to enforce this.
Well, I'm just going to have a little bit of a rant, Damian, because this is one of my passions. I used to be a social media queen back when it was first starting up. So I've been in this industry for a very long time. First of all, you're right. They can't actually implement it. It'll be like that mad Western Australian thing that they tried where with the Aboriginal Indigenous heritage thing where it all fall apart and was unenforceable. That's what this is going to be, an expensive mess. But also, Labor has forgotten that they've been cultivating this young youth vote for a while, and they've just gone and destroyed that because nobody who's had their internet banned, basically their internet ban, is going to come through and vote for Labor when they turn 18. Sorry, it's not going to happen. But you know what's really frustrating me is this is another Peter Dutton thought bubble. Anthony Albanese did not come up with this on his own. Dutton thought, you know what? The policeman in him thought, I'm going to ban social media for under 16 because I want to keep people safe. And Albanese went, you know what? If we ban social media for 16, we're going to have a way to check how old you are. And the best way to do that is going to be to integrate social media with digital ID. And so this voluntary digital ID that both of our politicians have been going on with is now going to become mandatory, because how else are you going to verify your age to the satisfaction of the government? It's going to be through the government itself. And so basically what we're doing is seeing this emergence of communist level control over our access to the public forum. But you know what, Damien, you're also quite right. Social media is not a couple of apps on TikTok. It is an enormous collection of things, including YouTube, where kids actually might learn something as opposed to school. And my final point, I know you want to talk, but my final point is that almost all the bullying that happens on social media that results in actual harm comes from kids at school. It is a school problem, not a social media problem.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, the extent to which my kids used through their teenage years social media to learn, I mean, they would, especially YouTube, I mean, the educational benefits of YouTube are enormous. So it's just, the whole thing is just completely nuts. I mean, they're never going to be able to implement it. For that reason, I get it with the digital ID. I don't know how we're going to avoid digital ID. I mean, that's just coming. That's also something that I don't think we're going to be able to avoid. It's just the technology's there and it exists and we've got to deal with it. But also, I mean, it's got to be managed properly. We've got to police governmental abuse of digital ID, of course.
Well, two things happen. First is the privacy laws have been corrupted through pushing these bills through. So they've removed certain levels of privacy. I'm not going to go into it, but to do with how they handle data at the government level, they've been destroyed in the name of so-called safety. And when we saw with COVID, when they brought that tracking stuff in, they said, oh no, it's just for COVID. We promise we won't use it for policing. They used it for policing straight away. I guarantee you access to social media will be misused by the police instantaneously as soon as it's brought in. This will not protect a single person, let alone children. Might protect them from knowledge, though, because they're not going to learn anything.
I also think, though, Alexandra, the timing of this, it's really designed to cover up what they've been doing this week with the misinformation bill, right? It's basically, I mean, look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, as you well know, but in public relations, what you do is when you've got something going through that you want to push through that you don't want people to pay attention to, you create a nice little circus over here for them to pay attention to. And that's exactly what the media are doing. They're all ignoring the coverage of the misinformation bill and all the important things that are being said about the misinformation bill. And they're focused on this lovely, bright, shiny story about kids having a social media ban under 16, as you would expect. It's a great story. So they're getting their sneaky little objective achieved here by taking our eye off the main ball, which is this hideous legislation that's going to destroy shows like this, shows like yours, and free speech generally, right?
Yeah, well, I was one of the first people to actually, as an advisor, to do the full rundown of the misinformation and disinformation bill. That was my job. And a lot of senators who you would know actually then went and used that rundown. And you're not a conspiracy theorist, Damian. You're quite right. And this legislation is monstrous. It's absolutely sprawling. But you know what it doesn't have anything in there for? There are no protections for your rights within that bill. Nothing. All about overreach. And you know what? They used the cover of the Trump election. You are totally correct.
Which tells you everything you need to know about the mentality of the people behind it, the mentality of the e-Safety Commission and the e-Safety Commissioner. They have no respect for people's privacy whatsoever. I feel like we need an episode of The Other Side Extra on this, Alexandra, which we might do in the next couple of weeks. So great. Great to chat to you, but we're out of time for the main show, unfortunately. But we'll talk again really soon, and we'll see you next week again.
Thank you, Damian.
Have a great week. Bye. You're watching The Other Side, your weekly analysis of the best news and commentary without the woke, and we need your support to help us keep doing what we are doing and maybe even more of it in the future. Just go to othersidetv.com.au and sign up for free, or sign up to the exclusive side and support us for as little as $4.50 a month. That's not even the price of a small coffee these days. We really do need your support to keep us going and growing because, as you know, we don't get the $1.2 billion of money taken from taxpayers against their will to play with like our Too Cool for School friends over at their ABC. What the hell do they do with that $1.2 billion? I mean, our budget's like in the, it's nowhere near that. TheOtherSideTV.com.au is our website, and even if you can't afford to support us financially, please do sign up for free, as we can then still keep in touch if the misinformation and e-safety police come after us. OtherSideTV.com.au, our new website. Check it out. The government's COVID response inquiry report, released a couple of weeks ago, has been described as an ethically offensive piece of sycophancy by a leading economist. Professor Gigi Foster of the School of Economics at the University of New South Wales says that she had long expected that this inquiry would be a whitewash, based on the brazen lack of acknowledgement of or accountability for COVID-era mistakes displayed so far by Australia's political class. Professor Foster says that the Albanese government COVID inquiry's report falls well short of the mark. We are now in far more debt, with less societal strength and cohesion, less trust in our institutions, and less health than before COVID. And these outcomes are not because of COVID itself, but because of the colossal mismanagement of the COVID crisis by our so-called leaders. Professor Gigi Foster joins me from Sydney right now. Professor Foster, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me on the show, Damian. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
In launching this report, the Health Minister, Mark Butler, and the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, said it was a great report and that we managed COVID very well as a nation, and that the report doesn't want to scapegoat anyone. We don't want to point any fingers at anyone or lay any responsibility at anybody's feet. And in reality, it just seems like they don't want to require anyone to take any responsibility for anything, but am I being too harsh?
No, in a sense, that is the underlying motivation. But if you read the report, it is full of hand-wringing and pearl-clutching around some mistakes that were made. That's been the clarion call generally on the side that's visited these betrayals on people not only in Australia, but around the West during the COVID era, is to say, well, maybe we got a few things wrong. And in this case, the report did mention some of the negative mental health effects of lockdowns, for example, and also the fact that our current cost of living crisis may in part be the result of extreme fiscal expenditure and a lack of raising interest rates until it was too late. So they do have a little bit of an acknowledgement that maybe a few things were done wrong, but they miss the big picture entirely. They miss entirely the fact that the main problems that we encountered were because of total mismanagement, complete departure from the pandemic management plans that we had in place before COVID. And so you basically end up with recommendations that say we should do more of what didn't work last time, the next time that we have a health crisis. And so it's just going the wrong direction.
Yeah, and look, the big gaping hole in this is that a lot of the abuses, and I'll call them that because that's what they were, abuses of power, came from the states.
Yep.
And this report deliberately only looked at the federal. This was a federal inquiry. It's designed to be a whitewash. We know that. They didn't look at the states. Do we need a proper royal commission? And do you think we'll ever get one, Gigi?
Oh, I definitely think we will get one. But I don't think that will be enough. If I look at the history of royal commissions in Australia, they tend to look at things that everybody has finally decided really are a problem, like banking and finance or aged care. There's a lot of song and dance. There's a lot of money poured into it. We get a big chunky report with lots of recommendations. And generally speaking, we don't see a lot of change. So I also think in terms of the COVID crisis in particular, the damage was done at such a detailed and local level on so many different levels that we need something much more than a royal commission, actually. And I think that what we need has to be come up with and then instigated by people at the grassroots. I do not think it will come from the top down.
Well, it can't, can it? Because our political class, our political elites are the ones being who are in the witness box here, right? So it's like,
yes,
you can't have them investigating themselves. It's got to come from the ground up. And I guess the ballot box might be the only place we can do that. But it's both the major parties that were at fault. Do you think they're going to take the lesson, though? Do you think they'll ever try it on again? If there were another pandemic, God forbid, but they did say, there will be a next time, and we're going to have to know how to manage it next time. Well, you could use the crisis plans we had before the last one that you ignored. That would be nice.
Exactly.
God forbid you should do what you planned to do in the first place.
I know.
But I mean, this whole, we did the best we could at the time under very difficult circumstances. Excuse me, you were told 1,000 times over by people in the moment that you completely ignored that you shouldn't just be listening to your CHOs or abdicating power to your CHOs. You've got to take responsibility as a leader, and you've got to make decisions based on a wide range of advice from a wide range of people, including the incredible impact of these lockdowns.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the lockdowns era. Quite apart from the human rights, the civil liberties, and all the other abominable, absolute whitewashing. Did the lockdowns, what did this report say about the lockdowns versus what you know about research done subsequently into the lockdowns and whether they worked or not or were of any benefit? The cost-benefit analysis was right.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you know, Damian, the government in Australia, neither the Commonwealth nor the states have actually come out with a cost-benefit analysis defending lockdowns, a proper one, a proper evaluation, looking at all the costs and benefits that were involved. What people typically do, and this is reported in this inquiry as well, is to say, well, look at our COVID-19 results, our deaths in 2020 and 2021 from COVID-19, and look at our economic performance in those 2 years relative to peer nations. Hey, we didn't do too badly, ergo, conclusion, the lockdowns worked, QED, right? That's what they say. And this is nonsense because you're completely ignoring so many other costs that the lockdowns required us to pay in terms of mental health, in terms of disrupting the economy, in terms of health, directly, physical health, staying inside, not getting sunlight, not seeing your friends, all of these things, the children's disruption of human capital, crowded out healthcare for everything that wasn't COVID, all of these things I consider in my cost-benefit analysis, which I finally wrote with Sanjeev Sablock, ex-Victorian Treasury economist, in 2022, because the governments of Australia had not written something like that. And I thought, we've got to do it. And what I find in that report is that lockdowns delivered a quantum of cost to Australia that was at least 68 times how much benefit they could possibly have delivered. And really, at this moment, with hindsight, I'm not sure that even that quantum of benefit was there. So
right. I just want to emphasize that, Gigi, for everybody at the moment. I don't want to just brush over that. That's an incredible finding. You conducted a report because governments didn't. At the University of New South Wales, in your capacity as a professor of economics, you did this report with a previous Victorian economics government economist, Sanjeev Sablock, and you showed that lockdowns inflicted human costs on Australia in an amount equal to at least 68 times the value of the human benefits they could possibly have delivered. Not economic. People say, oh, you worry about the money. No. This is human benefits, human impacts. 68 times worse potentially than what benefit could have been extracted. So that's a massive failure of policy decision making, of leadership, of the lot, right?
Precisely. And this is exactly why I have been pleading with governments to look at the actual data, look at what we see when we do a proper evaluation of policy, the way that we normally evaluate policy, Damian. I mean, cost benefit analysis is the bread and butter of treasuries around Australia and around the world. This is how we normally evaluate policy. But that, again, just like the pandemic management plan, has gone out the window because it's politically inconvenient. And so, unfortunately, we don't see a recognition of my cost benefit analysis or any of the other maybe dozen or so that have been done around the world, very serious ones, evaluating lockdowns and finding that they were absolutely the wrong policy and were incredibly destructive. So we don't see that. What we see is instead this sort of very superficial quote unquote evaluation, followed by some admissions that there were mistakes made, and therefore we should tighten the reins next time. For example, by establishing an Australian Centre for Disease Control.
What an original idea. Let's have a Centre of Disease Control. The answer to all failings of government from government is more government.
That's the thing.
They're going to they just want us to, set up another massive organization, massive bureaucracy. And what are they going to cut to pay for that? Are they going to cut some health department jobs that we've got now and move them over, or are they it's just more money?
It's so conceited and it's so disrespectful to the power of the grassroots, the power of the individual person on the street to discover what is best for him and his family. That notion that we need experimentation and freedom in a crisis more almost than we do in normal times in order to innovate our way out of that crisis. All of the things we discovered during the 2020-2021 crisis, which we could have used to help people who were infected with COVID, were basically ignored, suppressed, or outright banned by the people in charge during COVID. And that happened not just here in Australia, but as you know, also in the US, for example, with the FDA's horse dewormer tweet about ivermectin. That sort of behavior from the control center to suppress what is being learned and discovered that could actually be helpful at the coal face, that pattern happened over and over and over again. So in response to seeing that, what we should do is say, hey, we need less centralized control. We need more of the disseminated power and belief and trust in the power of humanity the next time that we have a major crisis. And the government should catalyze and assist and disseminate knowledge, but not try to coerce anybody and not have a command and control approach.
Yep, absolutely. Gigi Foster, thank you so much for joining us on the other side. We hope to have you on the show again in the very near future and for a bit longer as well, I hope. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks so much, Damian.
All right. Well, Gigi is involved with an organisation called the Australians for Science and Freedom. So if you'd like to get involved in that organisation, supporting that organisation, having a look at the work that they do, it's full of very smart, very senior people, doctors, lawyers and economists. Australians for Science and Freedom. They are Melbourne-based, but they operate all over Australia. So Gigi's in Sydney, obviously. Get onto that, Australians for Science and Freedom. Now, they have a big conference coming up. They have an annual conference every year. And next weekend, or this coming weekend, the 15th of November, they are doing their second conference, their second annual conference. It's called Progress Through Science and Freedom. And it's open to anybody. You can go along. It's a totally open conference. There's a small fee, obviously, to attend, but just jump online, have a look at that. So Australians for Science for Freedom just Google Australians for Science and Freedom, and it'll come up, and you can check out the conference that's coming up on the weekend. And that is all for this week on The Other Side, your weekly analysis for the best news and commentary without the woke. Please remember to tell all your friends about the show. Please follow us on X. I don't know what's going on X. Things are slowing down on X a bit. So we're at Other Side Oz, AUS, at Other Side Oz. It's always on the screen here. But do follow us on X if you don't follow us on X already. Also YouTube at Other Side Oz. Just look up Other Side Australia if you want to steer friends to the show. You've got to put the Australia in or you get all sorts of wacky other sidey stuff. We're back on TikTok too. Watch out for our new shorts on YouTube also. And the way you can support us on these platforms is to smash all the like, subscribe, and all those other buttons, because what that does is that motivates all the algorithms and we get seen more. So it really helps to amplify. We do need your support. Unfortunately, I've got to ask for a bit of money. Jump on our new website, othersidetv.com.au, othersidetv.com.au. And remember, we do drop a new show every Friday night at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. So we look forward to seeing you again next week. Join us then. Have a great week in the meantime. Bye for now.